Struggling with scanning errors and peeling labels? Moving or reconfiguring your warehouse? Implementing a new WMS? The wrong labels can slow your operation down. Luckily, ID Label has durable, scannable barcode labels and signs built to last and keep your operation moving. Plus, if you need to get those labels installed, they've got it covered. Their expert team installs rack labels, overhead signs, floor striping, and more with precision, so your warehouse operations continue uninterrupted. I've installed tens of thousands of labels in my career, and I wish I had someone else do it for me. Get a free sample pack at idlabelinc.com, because when they do the barcodes, you can do more. That's idlabelinc.com for a free sample pack and more information.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, this is part of our special safety series, which ties into our released safety report, the first of its kind coming from the New Warehouse. And today we are going to have Dan Klinger. He is the president and founder of MTAC Industrial Solutions. And we are going to talking about warehouse racking safety, and we're going to dive into a little bit about what MTAC does, and we're also going to dive into some of Dan's advice and what he's seen out there in the warehouses around rack safety and damage, and how to make sure that you don't let it get too far. So Dan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Kevin. Glad to be here, sir. I'm well. Thank you.
Definitely happy to get you on here. Happy to talk about this topic. I mean, I think safety in general is incredibly important to discuss, especially around the warehouse or any industry for that matter. But racking, I think, particularly carries, literally, I guess, carries a lot of weight, right? When we talk about
indeed.
that. So definitely happy to dive into this today. So before we do that, why don't you give us kind of a brief overview of MTAC, what you do, and you're the founder as well. So tell us a little bit about how this kind of company came together.
All right. We opened the doors in 1999, and I had already had a good career in quality control and had supplemented that career with ongoing contractor efforts, putting up buildings, churches and schools and whatnot. And I, had a lot of background in building structures, and then eventually decided I would like to try to take a run at my own little company. And that was the birth of MTAC. Back then it was called More Than a Carpenter Services. And it was primarily a residential path I was on, but a buddy of mine was selling infrastructure to industry. And from time to time, he had opportunity to sell infrastructure, but no one to install it. So he started inviting me in on the installation side. And that's when I started to really find my lane in helping sites get ready for business.
Interesting. So I'm curious, before that, I mean, how much did you know about warehousing or warehouse racking and that type of infrastructure?
No. Nothing. I was very comfortable with the building around it, but not so much what was going on in it. But yeah, as these opportunities presented, I started doing installation of racks, installation of conveyors, mezzanines, all kinds of safety signage and barriers and barricades. I was very adept pretty quickly at what the warehouses need to do their work. And that kind of spun me into the lane of maintaining the things I was bringing and delivering for those sites, because a lot of this stuff was new to the site. They didn't have people there that were adept at maintaining it. So that kind of spooled me up into that space. And then as that was progressing, I got into a niche service of repairing damaged pallet racks. I was installing someone else's solution at that time, did that for a number of years. And eventually I had an epiphany to come up with a better way to do that. So I got on with the engineering of all that and pursued the patents on that. And we now hold several patents in the space of pallet rack repair and maintenance.
Interesting. And very interesting to hear kind of that evolution a little bit, right? From going from knowing nothing about, the racking and what's going on inside these warehouses to creating solutions to be able to make them safer and better and improve them overall. So tell us, I guess I'm curious, like, when you first got into this, what was probably the biggest surprise to you? Like, cause you said you knew nothing about this prior. So when you started to do these jobs and get inside the warehouse and start to install this infrastructure, what surprised you the most?
Well, it didn't hit me immediately. It wasn't until I was here in the rooms for a little while that I started to catch something, and it was hard to identify it, but I would describe it in a word as complacency. Okay, we have the largest physical asset standing in the room, and it's filled with the largest financial asset on the shelves. And day after day, in this 24/7 pick cycle we all live and work in, people are trafficking these structures with very little actual hands-on experience, with even less actual hands-on training, trafficking these structures and damaging them then around the clock. And there's a sense of complacency that I have identified because no one is actually understanding the threat we're all surrounded by. When these structures are being damaged around the clock and no one's doing anything about it, I mean, they're not even reporting the damage when it occurs. They drive away from it, hoping no one caught that. No one saw that on the video. No one heard that crash. Like, they all just run and scurry from the threat, as opposed to waving a flag to say, uh-oh, we have a site level threat here. And that is part of the complacency I'm speaking of. And then the next day, the next business cycle, like whatever their schedule is, someone drives by it and they don't report it. And this goes on around the clock now. And it's a genuine sense of complacency. Yep. These structures are so engineered, brilliantly engineered, robustly engineered. This is not a reflection on the engineering of the structure or the OEM itself, the manufacturers of these structures. This is straight up a complacency driven by the users of these structures.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it is, like you said, there's a bit of people are scared, I think, in a sense, right? Like it's complacent. There's some damage that happens to the rack, and like you said, they scurry, right? They run away because they're afraid that, oh no, they damaged the rack, like they're going to get fired, right? Or something's going to happen to them. They don't want to get in trouble. But at the same regard, right, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure you could share with us some stories that seriously can compromise that racking structure, right, which can lead to some serious damage, right, potentially even fatality at some point. And I think that's really important to highlight there, and that complacency is such a negative impact to the safety overall, whether it's from the racking or other types of things that are happening in the operation as well. So I'm curious, what, when you go into these facilities, because you're installing new, right, but you're also repairing as well. But what frequency do you see that there is damage to racking, I guess, in general, and then also damage to racking that is like seriously compromising the structure?
Frequency initially is, I would address the frequency for inspection. And from an outsider coming in, I'm recommending that a site do that with regularity, be intentional, involve others in the inspection who don't have a horse in the race. I mean, like when we go out to do a damage assessment at a site, it starts with a baseline where we gather all the math for all the different structures in the room. And that includes a wall-to-wall damage assessment. And then that moves on to a summary report of our findings. And then we follow that up with immediately with a cost to repair. Okay. So that's our process. We have honed that. We have perfected that. We are proficient at it. So we do that quarterly for a number of sites. Other sites will ask us to come in semi-annually, and still others just on an annual basis. They just want random, verifying that they're getting good information from their own staff. We recommend that they do these inspections every shift. Before you guys start engaging these structures, look what just happened. Is there anything new? Is there anything that's a threat? If so, take it on, deal with it, address it. Okay. And we'll get into how we feel you should best address that here momentarily. But now to the heart of your question, the frequency of the damage in the sense of what are we seeing? And I am here to tell you, I am here to report that it is a very common occurrence that literally every single assessment we go on, we find legit threatening damage at every site. This is happening around the clock now. And that's the alarm I'm trying to raise, and why I'm so thankful for this moment on your platform to be able to share it is, look, this is just getting worse by the day. We have more buildings rising up out of the ground. They're growing like mushrooms across our land. And they are staffed by people who are poorly trained, if they're trained. And then there's this threat of immediacy. We have to get the box to the door now. So there's this ongoing pressure. So we've got this perfect storm that is rolling around the clock now across our country and threatening the sites and the livelihoods and the very lives of the people who work in these buildings. And I'm not making this up. I'm telling you, as a matter of fact, the threat level is DEFCON 1 in my estimation. And until industry is willing to take that up and start addressing these threats as they occur, I'm afraid that it's just putting more and more lives in peril, more and more sites at risk.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point there, and it sounds like, and you can confirm here, but it sounds like since you started, because you've been doing this for a little while, right? Since you started, it sounds like maybe there's been an uptick in what you've seen. Is that true?
Absolutely, both in the volume of sites that are open for business today, as well as the intensity of the damage that is occurring. For us to come up on a goods defying gravity location in the room is daily fare now. And what I'm saying there is the forklift forks or its counterweight on the back or the pallet full of goods has struck the vertical member with such force that it sheared its anchor that is holding that post where it's at in the world, sheared it off the floor, and the goods are defying gravity because the post is now dog-legged. It's not even touching the floor. Yeah. Like, this is normal business now.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You work hard for your warehouse, but is your technology working as hard as you do? Don't you think your warehouse deserves that? Find that technology work ethic with the EPG One Unified Supply Chain Execution Suite that's built to arm warehouse leaders with tech that powers competitive edge. With modular solutions for WMS, WCS, TMS, Workforce, Doc, 3PL billing, Control Tower, and the #1 voice picking solution named Lydia Voice, the EPG One Suite gives you tech that works harder for your warehouse and the agility to help you scale with confidence and be built for what's next. Smarter, connected, and harder working logistics starts at EPG.com. That's EPG.com. Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's, and I've seen some pictures, and I'm sure you have seen some interesting things in person, but I mean, it's pretty incredible to see something like that and just know, the weight that some of these racks are handling. and that they could just be, like you said, gravity defying in that sense. So I'm curious from your perspective, or maybe you could share with us, like, what is the craziest or the wildest damage that you've seen?
I've got a library of answer right there.
I'm sure you do.
I literally do. I mean, for years, I have been the tip of our spear, going out all over this United States from coast to coast, going into buildings, walking the aisles myself. And yeah, I've got a collection of stories that will raise the hair on your neck where I am uncomfortable being in the room when I see what I'm looking at. And I'm quick to get my note on what it's going to take to remedy. And then I go find safety to say, listen, you have a site level threat over in this aisle at this bay, and I'm recommending that you take immediate action. I mean, that's coming from someone with authority. I mean, I'm not a part-timer in this. This is my full-time gig. And as someone who holds patents in this space and someone who has remedied a lot of this damage, I do have a voice to say, listen, you have a genuine threat in your lap, and it's time to act and get on with it, So, but yeah, which story is the question you're asking for? I can share this one with you real quick. This happened not long ago, and this happens regularly. That's why it's a good one to share. I come up on a goods defying gravity location in the room. The frame is fully dog-legged. It's unsupported. I'm looking at 3.5 stories worth of goods standing right in front of me with no support under it. Oh, wow. And they have closed the aisle, correctly so. This particular site was a very unique site. It only had 5 aisles. Oh. Okay, because it's mostly conveyor in this room. But they've got high volume movers on shelves in these 5 aisles. Well, this particular aisle was just off center of the 5. So it closed 3 aisles. When the threat happened, the site was that diligent about protecting the little bit that they had, and they closed the aisle of impact and the 2 adjacent because these were single bay depth aisles. So there was nothing tying anything together. They were all just individual line of structure, right? As opposed to back with a flue space. Yeah. So a very unique threat, and the site acted properly. They closed the aisle and therefore closed a part of the building. Like a bunch of the staff were sent home because there was no work. They couldn't get at their goods. So again, this costs momentarily, okay? But when you think about the cost of going on with business as usual in this setting, the thoughts start getting pretty astronomical pretty quick when you talk about the loss of lives, the loss of injuries, the loss of business and commerce, the loss to the brand. I mean, there are so many things that are actually in play that you have to step back for a moment to really grasp and then make your decisions. But we deployed, and within hours, we had the situation remedied. That's an example of cooperation between a vendor and an end user.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, and was that from a forklift strike, or how did that damage occur?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The guy was on a wire in an area of a warehouse called VNA, very narrow aisle, right, where the operator can lock on to a wire that's embedded in the floor, and that will allow him to just simply drive forward and raise and lower his equipment without the ability to turn left or right. And he managed to find himself off of that wire and crashed into the structure, not just defying gravity in the one location, but darn near it in the post next to it. So when we went in for the remedy and repair, we actually addressed both in the same moment, and we're in and out of the repair in less than an hour.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that the whole system in place, the wire to keep that from happening, somehow came disengaged or was not engaged. So important to make sure you're engaging if you're an operator, right? To be able to do that. But now tell us and talk us through, like, how do you go about repairing this damage? You mentioned you have a couple patents on some different things. So talk to us a little bit about what does a repair look like, and how do you address that?
Okay, so our solution involves us asking the customer to just stop traffic. Like until this can be addressed, just stop traffic, because while the one is defying gravity and it speaks to how robustly and terrifically these things are engineered, it's the post next to it on either side that's your facility threat now. Because if one of those gets clipped or enough force is applied to it, it's all coming down. And now we're in a whole other level of response. It won't be me you're calling now. You're calling 911. And a sidebar right there, I'm discouraged to share with you that 911 isn't ready for this call. On another lane, we have been in another pursuit, and we have found out that most of the country fire departments are not even aware that this can happen, let alone doing any level of training for it. So process that for just a second.
Yeah.
You are alone in your decision.
Yeah.
So back to your question. I'm sorry, but so in 2018, I had an epiphany to create a quicker response to this threat, and began the engineering of it and developed a PE stamp solution for our UpRight rapid rack repair solution. We went on to patent both our process to deploy it as well as the piece itself. And this is the first of its kind modular rack repair system. And it allows us to adjust the height of the kit on the fly to the damage that we have just identified and are ready to respond to. And this is a new thing in the world, as far as most of industry doesn't understand how quickly this can all get done now. And we've been successfully doing this since 2020. It's not new to us or our customers. We have built out a terrific customer base because of our ability to respond to these threats right now. And consequently, we stay pretty busy with all the damage that's happening and our ability to respond quickly to it. So what we do is we'll show up once everything's been identified. We understand all the math. We'll show up. We will deploy a uphold tower jack system, another design of ours, where we hold up your loaded structure. Literally, like we don't want you to unload the structure. I know it's common practice, and it has been for decades, that, look, we have to get that load off of that threatened structure. I understand the logic of that, but please pause for just a second and study the physics of that. Because if the operator were to pick something up and mishandle it ever so slightly, either he didn't pick it up enough and he started driving back, or he picked it up too much in his pucker up, he picked it up too much and he grabbed the beam above him with the backstop of his own forklift, he can pull the structure down on him with little to no force at all. Okay, so this is a very dangerous situation. And for years, it's all you could do, because you were going to be waiting weeks or even months to have the thing repaired. But today, in the wake of UpRight and how we go about this, it's hours away. Your repair is hours away now. So we're asking industry, can you please stop putting your people in danger? I mean, really, which box in the whole aisle, which box is worth that employee's life, any employee's life, right? Which box in the aisle is worth the threat to the entire site, where all those employees lose their livelihood because the room fell over like a series of dominoes? Honestly, which box? That's the question, right? And we're saying, don't touch it. Just close that aisle. You can work around it for a few days if it takes a few days. But please, let's think this through together. Let's mitigate the risk, not take it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point there, and really underlines it, is which box is worth that life. And I think that's a great safety line there, and something that really resonates with just how impactful and how grand a scale, I guess, the damage of this racking can be potentially to those who are working around it and involved in it. So I guess to that point, if you look at, you talk about this, gravity defying situations, right? But you see other situations where maybe the rack is bumped into, is a little bent, it gets a little twisted, these different things. I mean, give us an idea of, to put in perspective, if something like that happens, and it looks like from someone looking at it that it seems like it's okay, maybe, right? Like when that structure is compromised, whether it's just like maybe like I won't say like a soft tap, but like just like a bend, and hasn't necessarily been twisted or like cut off at some point. I mean, how long? I mean, can that actually survive? And is it just like hanging in the balance? Like how quickly does that structure get compromised?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things in play there as far as the design of the structure itself. As I mentioned earlier, a single aisle as opposed to a back-to-back aisle that's got a flue connection between this frame and the one behind it. Like the physics are going to definitely be in play in the response to your question. It's a great question you're asking, but it's a very complex answer. And I am asking our customers to be intentional about, look, if it looks threatening, treat it as such. Like your instinct, your gut is often the best judge. You know what I'm saying? And there's a balance here between safety and operations. I understand. And it's a dance. It's a delicate dance at times because of what the decision that you're about to make will have on operations. But again, you have to just look at it through the correct lens. It's a long-term lens I'm asking you to view this threat through. Not just the immediacy of, well, if we close the aisle, operations can't get to those boxes. I understand that, and so do they. But when you step back a little bit and take on the fact that, well, okay, but if someone does something wrong in light of the damage we're looking at on an adjacent member behind or beside this damaged location, okay, what's the consequence of that? Who's caught up in that? What will that look like on the big picture of costs, legal, threat to brand? I mean, like there's a lot in play right now, and these decisions have to be made by adults in the room, not people in panic and not people who are just pushing boxes.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what you're talking about earlier in the conversation, right? Where people, it's not only just like the forklift operator, right? That's hit the rack, that's afraid that something's going to happen to them regarding their job, right? But if you look at leadership too, in those positions, they're afraid that like, oh, if we shut down part of the operation, right, we're not going to hit our goals, right? So it's a very interesting balance, and kind of the culture, I think, speaks to a lot of that, and is a driving factor on, whether or not like, you say that like it doesn't look so bad, right? Like the pallets are still staying on the rack, right? And,
Right.
the rack's not swaying back and forth, so it should be fine, right? Where in
Right.
reality, like maybe it's not fine, right? Because I mean, most people that are in those positions are not necessarily experts on racking structure and the physics and all those things like you just touched on, right? So so I'm curious, what do you think from preventative measures? Like, how do you recommend that companies, operations, how do they go about trying to prevent this damage from even happening in the first place?
Well, that too is a little complicated as far as there's multiple fronts on that as well. It's an ongoing challenge to be preventing this stuff, but it begins with proper training, quite honestly. And the training has to be more than simply the mechanics of how to control and drive and utilize the high-tech equipment these people are using now to traffic these structures, these high-reach vehicles. They're complicated, right? But a critical component of the training really does need to include the fact that, look, these structures, while they're designed to handle some damage, they're not designed to avoid collapse. And collapse can happen simply from traffic. Collapse can also happen from, natural events such as tornadoes and all wind damage. These modern structures, the way they're going up so quick, caution, they come down even quicker. Okay. Once the lid is lifted due to a high wind event, there's nothing supporting the wall. The wall falls in, the racks fall down. Okay. Again, simple physics, and it has to do with how close to the structure are you looking? Like, you have to stand back and understand the room in order to properly prevent the damage. Other solutions for prevention could include using guards that either bolt down to the floor to protect the post or bolt onto the post to deflect a strike. Like there's a number of great solutions out there now, but as part of all that, though, you still have to be keeping up with assessment and inspection. Like that is your best prevention, is to know what is going on with your structures.
Yeah, and I think those are all great tips there, and I've seen some of the guarding too, and I think it's pretty interesting. What would you say is like the number one root cause that you've seen for damages in your career here?
Hands down, it's the equipment and the operators on it. Like seismic can drop these things, weather can drop these things, overload can drop these things, but hands down, damage inflicted by the operator and the equipment they're on is the most common. Yep.
Yeah. So going back to that kind of training piece there, and I think that's such a critical thing. It's the training, and then the culture overall too, like of the operation itself, and having that safety focus, so that the employees don't feel like they got to run away, right, when they hit something, and they can go ahead and be proactive and report it, and not feel like they're going to be in trouble. Have that psychological safety as well, right, within the space. So if we look towards the future, what do you see as kind of the future of warehouse rack safety and kind of prevention as well?
To answer that, I'm going to go back and finish the answer to a question you asked earlier, and it has to do with UpRight specifically. And I'm not trying to make this into an infomercial about UpRight, but I really do see this as the future in this regard. As I said, we will come in with a state-of-the-art jack system that we engineered. It's PE stamped, and we will hold up your loaded structure, right? Then we can cut out the damage, literally remove it from the structure, and then we bolt in our engineered prosthetic to fill in that space. Okay. And when we do that, we make the structure as strong or stronger than what it was when it was first installed. Okay. That's the engineering that we came at this with. Okay. And what we've done, it works on all the racks we have engaged, as far as like, we've got a variety of different post stock that will allow your beam to go right back where it was when we're done. As far as if there was a beam in the plane of damage. Okay. So where do I see it going? Well, listen, if I have my way, I would love to see industry stop putting people into that danger zone. Okay. Like I said, I understand that was the practice for decades, because that's all they could do. They had to wait on the solution, but they don't have to wait anymore. Like, we have story after story, example after example, case study after case study of us getting out there and fixing it right now. Matter of fact, when we launched into the safety audiences in 23 and 24 to their trade shows, we were claiming to them, hey, listen, we will fix it tomorrow if you have a PO today. If you're within 24 hours of our location in Indianapolis, and we have already done our baseline for your room, you're in an emergency, we will be there within 24 hours of your purchase order. Done. And we do this routinely for our customers. It's what they count on from us, because they recognize the peril they're in. So they engage us, and then they let us do our work. And this is all like where I would love to see the industry go, as far as just taking the moment to stop the threat, close the aisle, get it fixed, and then open up for business again. And I know that's going to give a lot of indigestion to operations people. I understand that. But we've addressed some of that on this podcast today. Which box is that important?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great thing. And I love to hear that you have that quick response time, because then I think that, that balances a little bit between, making the right choice and trying to get the boxes out the door, like as you said there. So very interesting to talk to you, Dan, and really, really insightful on the safety aspect. And I think a lot of great insights here to be able to take away and really take a look and value, what you need to do to make the right choice when you have some damage rack or potential damage rack, and do some preventative measures as well around that, which could be that inspection or that training. But if people are if they have a damaged rack or they looking for some inspection or your services, what's the best way to get in touch and learn more about MTAC?
I would encourage you to visit the UpRight website at www.uprightrackrepair.com and contact us through our contact page there. And we take all comers. We're in some of the largest networks on the planet, and we keep them operating. And they love our goods and services because of our timely response. And we're excited to be on this podcast with you today, Kevin. I wanted to thank you personally. I was invited to this call through your colleague, Mike Huff, and I started digging in on you to understand, well, who is this guy? What's he up to? And I just want to compliment you on your lane and the intensity with which you run your race. And we appreciate having a guy like you who's out here asking these questions and letting the experts come forward with their answers and giving your audience some value in this space, because there's a lot of stuff moving out here, but not a lot of people who are trying to keep up with it and shed a light into some of these situations. And we appreciate your role in all this, Kevin. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And it's all about creating awareness for important topics like we discussed today, and making sure that people on the floor and in the warehouse and the operations can keep up and continue to learn as well. So we appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your insights, and we will definitely put all that information about MTAC and the UpRight solution at thenewwarehouse.com and in the show notes here, as well as the safety report, which MTAC is also a part of. You can download at thenewwarehouse.com too. So Dan, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.